just wild. Anyway, let's get started. There's lots to get to. Let's get started. Greg comes up with this unbelievably great video talking about the situation, and he hits it perfectly, because at the beginning he's very, very serious, and he's talking about the situation. He's very serious about it, and then by the end of it, he has set the stage and he's playing all the characters, but he plays somebody who supports a Palestinian, the Palestinians backslash Hamas, I guess, and somebody who supports Israel, and it's French or chef's kiss. Haha. There we go. Watch. Here we go.
Are you concerned about the mobs of angry Muslims in cities waving Palestinian flags? Well, if you want even bigger mobs of angry Muslims, then you should support Israel bombing Gaza. That's right. When you support Israel bombing Gaza and other neighboring Muslim countries, you create refugees, which inevitably make it to the US, Canada, and other European countries. When a Muslim refugee comes to Canada, for example, do you think they magically stop being anti-Semitic when they cross the border? No, of course not. That's ridiculous. They buy some Tim Hortons and they remain just as anti-Semitic as they were when they got here.
So you support Hamas, a terrorist organization that kills women and children?
No, I don't support Hamas either. Personally, as a Western white man thousands of miles away from this foreign conflict, I don't really care. But I would prefer if you two found a way to stop killing each other so this doesn't escalate into a world war.
Excuse me, Muslims and Palestinians have always been the victims of the Israeli colonizers since the beginning. Muslims have never done anything wrong to Jews.
I think that's quite the oversimplification as well. Because from what I can see, you two have been hating, dehumanizing, and killing each other for quite a long time now. It scares the shit out of me. I want to stay out of it. I do encourage Jews and Muslims, though, to figure your shit out. This has been a message from white people everywhere.
Well, I am a white American, and I support Israel. They represent democracy in the Middle East, and if we don't go...
Are you sure you're white, sir?
Yes, I'm white.
How many passports do you have?
Why is that relevant?
Are you an American Israeli dual citizen?
Even asking that is anti-Semitic.
If you say so, Congressman.
Are you really going to support Islamic extremism?
I don't support Islamic extremism, and I don't support warmongering Zionists. I support a border wall for America. Thanks for watching.
Well, that's racist. Wow, racist? White supremacist. You sound like a white ethno-nationalist. That sounds like a neo-Nazi talk to me.
Pretty sure I just...
Epic.
watched you two dehumanize each other all week, calling each other animals and calling to genocide one another. But yes, it's the white people that are the racists. Let's go with that.
Good job, Greg. Wonderful work, as usual. And 2 minutes, sorry for the long video, and we're going to watch another video right away. I apologize. Usually I talk more, but, well, maybe it's a welcome break. Who knows? But fundamentally, I think this is a good primer. And I'm not saying as well that the bombing of the hospital was done by the Israelis. It seems, and you'll see in the tabs once we get there, that it was a jihadi group that was in contact with other people bragging about bombing this hospital. Regardless, here is history that I was talking about that is necessary to understand things as they stand now. Here we go.
Is a simple outline of a very complex story. So what took Britain to Palestine in the first place? For centuries, the region had been ruled by the Ottoman Turks. But when the First World War broke out in 1914, the Turks allied with Britain's enemies, Germany, and the other Central Powers. Palestine and the Middle East were regarded as highly strategic to the British Empire because of oil, and also because the Suez Canal controlled the sea route to India. The Middle East was now under the control of Britain's enemies, so Britain considered it vital to defeat the Turks and gain control for the Allies. In 1917, General Allenby and his troops advanced across southern Palestine, and in December they captured Jerusalem. By the following year, all of Palestine had come under British control. Her troops were to remain there for the next 30 years.
So that's the history bringing us up to 1947. 1917 to 1947 was British controlled, and then England says this documentary, and it's not very long, but it's beyond the scope of the podcast today, talks about how the Brits wanted to pull out of Palestine and they wanted to give it over to the Jews. So the Brits invaded during the First World War because the Ottomans, who previously controlled it, the Ottoman Empire, the Turks, the Turks, as according to this video, they controlled it, and then Britain invaded, and then Britain said to the United Nations, we should just create Israel there. And this documentary goes into the why of that, which is why I can't show it. Not I can't show it. It's just, it's too much. There's too many layers. There's too many players. People will lose interest, and it's fine. But it's interesting. Link is in the description if you want to watch it. It's 20 minutes. I watched it on the treadmill this morning at double speed because that's what I do. But I thought it was very interesting, and I thought it lent a lot of, it filled in the blanks for things that I didn't know, like who controlled this area prior to it being disputed. Why doesn't it go back to the people? When the Brits said, we're done, why did the United Nations get to determine who got control of it? Why did it not just go back to the Ottomans, the people who previously controlled it? Why didn't, if the Brits invaded it and they're pulling out, why didn't it automatically revert to that? Because of the First World War or the Second World War? I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's a rationale. I asked my friend for the paperwork for the creation of Israel. I said, who signed that? Where is it? Can I look at it? Is there anywhere you can find the PDF or the picture or something like that? Was there a ceremony? He said, I don't know. And I said, this is the craziest creation of, this is the wildest creation story I've ever heard. The UN, who has no kind of, as far as I understand it, ability to create nations, created a nation, and everybody just went with it and they don't ask questions, and they will rabidly fight you if you disagree with their position on it. Crazy town. Anyway, let's talk about Palestine. Let's talk about the latest news. Keith Wood says the Israeli Minister of National Security posted this minutes after Israel bombed a hospital. Not true. And I'll show you in the next tab. Killing hundreds of already injured civilians. Also not true. And I'll show you in the next tab. The same minister who defended spitting on Christians as an old Jewish tradition. The world is now seeing the true face of these people. And apparently this is true that he did post this. It's a screen grab, so I'm inclined to believe it, but who knows. It says, as long as Hamas does not release the hostages in its hands, the only thing that needs to enter Gaza are hundreds of tons of explosives from the Air Force, not an ounce of humanitarian aid. I think it's gauche whether or not a hospital was just bombed, right? I think wishing, raining bombs down on people, that's not great, right? That's still pretty not great. That's pretty icky one way or the other. Let's find peace better than rain hellfire down upon them. After this, okay, hold on. We have to talk about, hold on, I may have to reorder this. I'll just go back. Here is what happened. Yeda, getting it wrong, sorry. It says eyewitness video of the failed Islamic Jihad rocket, which slammed into Al-Ahi Baptist Hospital in Gaza. International media awaits live replay of Islamic Jihad audio communications. Commenters ask, will AJ English react or just fan hatred? But here is the rocket fired from the same place, and then you can see it turn, it kind of veers off course and goes in the wrong direction. So this is a minute-long video. Here we go. See the, I don't know if you can see it. It's just a phone video and there's no audio, but the missile was arcing up and then it goes over top of the guy's head and then hits kind of the same direction, I guess, that he was filming. So further to that, here is Avi, and he says, Israeli media is reporting that the IDF has a recording. So Israel has a recording of a conversation between Islamic Jihad terrorists confirming that they launched the rocket that hit the Gaza hospital. It will reportedly be released shortly. So that's what actually happened. Here's Justin Trudeau condemning Israel. And people were very, very surprised. So this is CPAC that reported this, and people were surprised that Trudeau was already condemning. Oh, I'm not on the screen. Already condemning the Israel for the attack. He said he said Israel did this, and international rules need to be respected. And then they realized that Israel didn't do this, and Trudeau has to walk back these comments because you can't just, you can delete the tweet, and they did, but the video, it's the internet, man. Like, here we go.
The news coming out of Gaza is horrific and absolutely unacceptable. International humanitarian and international law needs to be respected in this and in all cases. There are rules around wars, and it's not acceptable to hit
Is the hospital bombing?
So he didn't say Israel did this. He said it's not acceptable to hit a hospital. There are rules around wars, and so on. Here's Alan Fry says, looks like it might have been a Hamas rocket that misfired. Too early to tell, but it's also too early for idle remarks about international law. Here's Jagmeet Singh. He says, bombing a hospital is a violation of international law. There must be a ceasefire now. And Richard says, disaster. Our hospital, Ali Arab Hospital, has taken a direct hit from an Israeli missile. Not correct. Early reports say hundreds of women and children killed. Again, not correct. This is a deliberate killing of vulnerable citizens. Well, maybe by terrorists, but not by the Israelis. The bombs must stop now. There can be no possible justification for this. And Biden yesterday said he's outraged and deeply saddened by what happened at the Al-Alahi Baptist Hospital and the terrible loss of life that resulted. So they're all weighing in on this. And I showed you these already that it's suspected. Well, this geo-confirmed says conclusions. A missile launched by a Palestinian group exploded midair, reason unknown. I showed you that part of the video and the explosion that resulted. One piece fell on the hospital, causing an explosion. The geolocation and timing of the footage is conclusive. More information will be added to this thread. So he's got a thread breaking this down, showing the video that I just showed as well, and saying that this is very surely not a rocket that came from Israel into Gaza hitting this hospital. However, the reaction from the politicians has sparked people to protest. This is Montreal in Canada yesterday, and here are people protesting.
Gaza, don't you cry. We will never let you die.
So there you go, right? People are upset and protesting, and they're on the side of Gaza. Again, here's Michael Cooper. He says, tonight at a conference dedicated to fighting anti-Semitism, a mob of protesters prevented conference goers from leaving out the front door. The RCMP wanted us to stay inside and away from the glass and to leave in groups. This is anti-Semitism on full display, and it's disgusting. That's Michael Cooper. And so wild. This is Toronto. And Cat Canada says this may look like a scene out of a dystopian police state, but it's actually a scene from Toronto where the cops have to be ready at a moment's notice to contain chaos at a pro-Hamas rally. So Cat Canada has got definitely a way that she is approaching this. Here is just the footage from Toronto. She said Toronto, but it sounds like French. Is this Toronto or is this Montreal? But it could be Toronto. I just might not recognize the language, I suppose. Efren says there's only one solution: Intifada revolution. Is that some kind of loaded language? I don't know what that means, so apologies if I've said something gauche. The pro-Hamas crowd here in Toronto call for violence to erase Israel here on the streets of Toronto tonight. So again, rain hellfire down upon them is very different than let's all have peace, kumbaya, right?
Intifada revolution. Intifada revolution.
Good thing they're not honking horns, eh? Jeepers creepers. That's terrorism, I hear. Amy says, New York. I have a feeling that phrase means something very well known and that might be more aligned to terrorism than honk honk. Right? Despite what the MP, was it an MP or a senator, said in the House of Commons, honk honk is not equivalent to Hail Hitler, but these phrases might be actual anti-Semitism. Very, very interesting stuff happening. Amy is talking about New York, right? Because it wasn't just in Canada that people saw and heard these allegations. And she says, New York is about to erupt. Thousands of Muslims marched on Washington Square Park in New York City, shouting the Islamic battle battle cry, Allah Akbar. As you can see, after 9/11, New Yorkers responded by surrendering their city to Islam. Of the thousands of mosques in America, nearly 85% of them have been opened since the September 11th Islamic terror attacks. New York has adopted in its entirety the European response to Islamic terrorism, appeasement, and genuflection to Islam. Historically, such behavior was required by non-Muslim citizens of Islamic states, known as dhimmahs, in exchange for protection, in addition to the payment of the special protection tax. I'm saying that wrong, and I know I am, for non-Muslims. So that's pretty wild. It's similar scenes in New York as to in Montreal and Toronto. Here we go. So, right? I mean, what do you expect? Is there something about traveling to this part of the world that makes you have the same values as this part of the world, or is that incorrect? We've been sold a lie. Rupa says, something strange about this story. Did the same hospital get hit twice, once on Saturday and also just a couple of hours ago? Also, here's the Anglican News Service, which also says the hospital was hit by a strike on Saturday. So this was the Palestine Chronicle, October 15th. It says Al-Ali Arab Hospital, excuse me, one of the main medical facilities in Gaza City was hit with a direct Israeli missile strike on Saturday. So how can you possibly believe anything coming out of anything, even if they genuinely were hit with something that came out of nowhere unexpectedly? You would imagine that the people on the ground would say, this must be Israel. Maybe. Would that be the conclusion that you would draw? Like, maybe. But it seems that the misinformation, the assumption, the incorrect assumption travels much faster than the truth of it. And the truth of it is much more complex, so people don't want to hear it. Right? This fits into the narrative. We don't agree with that. We're going to go protest. No, we're not going to learn about the whole thing. Vivian is responding to this CPAC report that was deleted, and I showed you the Trudeau response, and CPAC said, yeah, the news. They just quoted Trudeau. And Vivian, who is a former Israeli, she's the founder of State of TV, TLV podcast and digital newsletter. She was the ambassador to Israel. She's a lawyer. She's a Torontonian and a Tel Avivian, she says. And she says, here it is. The government of Canada rushed to post Justin Trudeau's condemnation of Israeli war crimes. Oops, turns out it wasn't true. The rocket misfired by an Islamic group, and I don't know what acronym she's using here, PIJ. I've never heard of that, so apologies. PMO tried to erase history by scrubbing this video. We will not allow them to. We have the screenshot. I had the video. So if you want the video, I can send it over. But he doesn't say Israel. He says that's not allowed in wars. So slippery guy. Wayne is responding to Israeli Defense Force. Israeli Defense Force says media outlets around the globe were quick to run Hamas's headlines without fact-checking. We now know that an Islamic Jihad rocket aimed at Israel misfired and hit the hospital in Gaza. Wasn't Islamic Jihad the group in True Lies? I thought that was the group in True Lies. I could be wrong. Anyway, AG says, so let's walk through it. We now have video of the scene showing the explosion is from the parking lot and the buildings are intact. There is no crater, no building demolished. This is inconsistent with the type of bomb many were suggesting yesterday. So yes, it's not good, but it's not nearly as bad as what people were saying that it was. So in the light of day, it looks very different, right? Here's another thing. Nathan says, now that day is broken and we're getting better evidence, I'm willing to share some preliminary thoughts on the Al-Hi hospital explosion. The photos of the scene are, to me, not consistent with an airstrike and are not consistent with the claims that 500 people were killed. And so he goes through why. And yeah, I mean, more of the thread says, first, I should mention that this thread isn't a forensic or expert investigation. I'm just sharing what I see and what I've seen previously, nor am I attributing one way or the other. Nor does this negate that countless civilians killed in Israeli campaigns or Israel's campaign. Okay, that's akin to, don't worry, I hate Trump too. Photos of the aftermath show that the vast majority of the damage is from fire. Only 3 cars show any signs of kinetic or structural damage, and for 2 of them, the general structure remains intact despite clear damage. Indeed, within 10 meters of the impact site, there are cars which appear mostly undamaged. This lack of structural damage to most cars is also clear in the IDF release of drone footage from less than 2 hours after the explosion. Again, these only show 3 cars with structural damage, and cars more than around 10 to 15 meters away appear mostly undamaged. Footage from the ground level this morning shows essentially no crater and very little damage to the buildings around 20 meters away from the impact site. Next, I wanted to highlight one of the things that the IDF claimed, showing damage to roofs of the hospital building around 30 to 45 meters away from the impact site. This would be consistent with an object that broke apart in midair, though I wouldn't view this point as conclusively as others. Namely, because the before images from 2 days prior to the strike, I believe there were reports of the hospital being minorly damaged in the strikes during that period. So it's possible that the roof damage is not from the same time as the explosion. But all in all, the damage we see is consistent with a small impact with a lot of fuel accelerant that likely caused most of the fire damage, and very little, within a very narrow radius, structural damage. Compare the damage from photos of rocket impacts in another place from last week. The only real damage is that the only real difference is that this explosion appears to have involved more accelerant, which would track with reporting that this barrage was aimed at Tel Aviv. So I don't know that he proves it conclusively, but enough to say that this is certainly not what was reported yesterday. Something happened. We can say that. Jack Straw points this out. In 2010, WikiLeaks released a 2007 communication between the head of IDF intelligence to the U.S. ambassador, and the highlighted part says Israel would be happy if Hamas took over Gaza, because the IDF would then be able to deal with Gaza as an enemy state, and it would be able to remove them, right? As we're seeing happen right now. I think that a lot of people are very on board with ending fighting of any kind, right? Ending the humanitarian disaster, the ongoing humanitarian disaster that we're witnessing. So it's interesting. Is Israel's funding of Hamas, does that complicate things? I think it does. Holly Doan says MPs express alarm after Jagmeet Singh tells Commons that Israel is sowing the seeds of genocide in Gaza. Yes or no, do you believe that Israel is committing or is about to commit genocide? The idea that in Canada we are supposed to fight the battles of the world, call out injustice in the world and fight those battles. Because if you want a country to stop doing something, you have to invade them and make them stop. You can't just say, hey, stop. You could use other levers. Trump used other levers very, very well, trading levers and things like that. But we don't have the political acumen active in our House of Commons, nor the will to actually do any of that. We could supply LNG to Germany, but no business case, right? But there's so many things that we could do, but we can't, because our government is hamstringing ourselves to even be self-sufficient, where we could be completely self-sufficient. So we don't do any of that. We don't prioritize ourselves in Canada. And that's... Hello everyone, thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful